Heaven Official's Blessing. Tian Guan Ci Fu by Mo Xiang Tong Xiu. Read by Plant Bones. Chapter 15. At Paradise Manor. Questions of Xianle. That sharp cry of desperation made Xialian's heart drop. He had hardly gathered his thoughts before his body was already charging in that direction. Outside the alley, there were a bunch of oddly shaped, sinister creatures, gathered in a circle, yelling one after another. "We got him! Beat him to a pulp again! Look however much food this little scumbag pilfered off me, I'm gonna slice the same off him! Every single bit!" Shi Qingxuan caught up. "Your Highness, what's going on?" Xialian didn't respond. He walked toward the group step by step, his pace growing in speed, and he soon broke into a run. He forcefully pushed past a couple of ghosts on the outside of the circle and saw that the one getting beaten was a boy dressed in tattered clothes. Judging by his size, he appeared to be around 15 or 16 years old, and he was curled up on the ground, trembling uncontrollably. Even though he clung tightly to his head, the layers of bandages that were messily wrapped around it were still visible. The bandages were covered in dirt, the same as his hair. Wasn't this the same bandaged boy that Xialian had briefly met at Mount Yuzun? The boy who had run off and couldn't be found? No wonder the Palace of Lingwen had been saying they couldn't find any trace of him. How could the Heavenly Palace of Lingwen find him in the mortal realm if the boy had escaped to the Ghost Realm's territory? The ghosts had been pushed aside by Xialian and were outraged and shoved him out again, just as one of them moved to yank on the bandages on that boy's head. "This little beggar is probably a freak, even uglier than me. Look how scared he is of people pulling those things off his face." Lan Chenqiu was furious. "What are you doing?" he cried. Then he walked up and hurled a few ghosts off to one side. Shi Qingxuan didn't have time to stop him and could only wave around with his fan. "Qianqiu, I thought we agreed not to act so impulsively." This time around, Qianqiu had riled up even more ghosts than before. "Where the hell did you come from?" they roared as they tackled him. "I'm sorry, Lord Windmaster," Lang Tianqiu called. "This will be the last time." Then he jumped into the fight, whacking the ghosts about. Shi Qingxuan let out an exasperated sigh. "I'm never going on a mission with you again." After that, of course, he also had to join in the brawl. Annoyingly, they couldn't use any spells, lest they give off spiritual light, so they had to resort to fighting with fists and feet. A smaller part of the group that was still beating up the boy was forcibly broken up by Xialian. He knelt, wanting to help the boy up. "Are you all right?" Upon hearing his voice, the boy shuddered and took a peek at him from his fetal position. Now that Xialian could see his face, he finally noticed that the bandages wrapped around the boy's head were thoroughly drenched in blood, with patches of black and red. It was a frightening sight, an appearance more terrifying than when they had last parted. The two big eyes peeping out of the gaps between the bandages were wrapped, black irises against white, unusually clear. And yet those ink-black eyes that reflected Xialian's silhouette were filled with terror. Xialian took the boy by the arm. "Come on, stand up. Everything is fine now." To his surprise, the boy screamed, shoved Xialian away, leapt to his feet, and bolted. Since the boy had once been infected with human face disease, he must have the connection to the kingdom of Xianle. Xialian's mind shivered at the mere sight of him, and he couldn't help but be a little dazed. Caught off guard by the force of the push, even his bamboo hat fell to the ground. After the initial shock, he called out, "Wait!" Just as Xialian was about to give chase, a few ghosts that had pulled away earlier grabbed onto him. The boy headed down the street, which was livelier than ever. At the rate he was effortlessly weaving through the groups of ghouls and ghosts with his small frame, he would disappear soon. It would be difficult for Rue to track down a person in this kind of setting, so in that split second of urgency, Xialian called out behind him. My lords, I'll leave this matter with you. Let's separate for now. Go hide and we'll meet here again in 3 days at the latest. Rue slid out and sent those ghosts flying in the direction of the other two officials. Xialian bent over slightly, picked up his bamboo hat, and set off running in the direction of the boy. He squeezed through the crowd with immense difficulty, shouting all the while, "Excuse me, excuse me." Because the boy spent most of his life hiding and dodging in the mortal realm, escaping was practically second nature to him. His head could be seen on one side, then there was a shadow the next, and after that there was nothing more. He was getting farther and farther away. Xialian didn't know if it was his imagination, but when he felt that the crowds on the street were getting thicker by the minute, with humans and ghosts alike pressed in against each other, it made it really difficult for him to jostle through. Xialian's mind was in disarray, so he knocked over a number of stalls, and he cried, I'm sorry, as he continued to run. Ghosts weren't to be crossed carelessly, however, and they had yelled after him, Sorry does shit! Catch him! Xialian suddenly felt a chill on his back, as if a hand seized him, and he immediately knocked it back. Who is it? The hand was a tentacle that had come out of nowhere, and a mob of ghosts came swarming, their screeching and rough voices surrounding him.
Hey, let's teach this little pretty boy a thing or two. Dare he start shit in Ghost City.
A large, dense crowd of nefarious creatures poured onto the street. Seeing that he was about to lose the boy in the crowd, Xialian did his best to throw off the tentacle that caught him. Everyone, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean any harm. Please allow me to find someone, and we can discuss reparations afterward. The horde of ghosts was relentless. You wish. In all the pushing and pulling, the boy had disappeared completely. Xialian was dazed, not quite sure what he was feeling. Was it disappointment at not being able to catch the boy, or was it relief that a nightmare had passed once more? Suddenly, there was a commotion in the ghost crowd. They immediately parted, forming a path. If someone of importance had arrived, Xialian came to his senses and saw a tall, black-clad figure walking straight toward him through the path created by the mob. That person yelled, Settle down, let him go. The black-clad figure, like most of the ghosts on the street, wore a mask. It was a funny mask, with a face that contorted as if it was smiling woefully. The mob muttered under their breath, It's the waning moon officer! And they released their hold on Xialian at last. It seemed this black-clad figure was someone significant in Ghost City. The moment he approached Xialian, he bowed. Greetings, Daojiang. Chengzhu wishes to see you. Huh? Me? Xialian pointed at himself. The waning moon officer replied, Yes, Chengzhu has been waiting for you at Paradise Manor. All around them, the mob sucked in their breath. Chengzhu wants to see him? Did I hear that right?
Paradise Manor? That's Chengzhu's sanctuary. You'd never had guests there.
Someone who had come from a different street pointed out, Wait a second, isn't he the one who won against Chengzhu today at the Gambler's Den? I mean, the one Chengzhu educated? All eyes were now focused on Xialian, each pair bigger than the next, forcing Xialian to raise the bamboo hat in his hand to hide from the stares. The waning moon officer beckoned. This way, please. Xialian nodded and followed him. The crowd parted once more, and the waning moon officer led Xialian through the path. No one dared follow, and after an incensed time, the two had left the bustling street behind and made their way further into a quieter, more remote part of the city. During their walk, the two barely conversed. The waning moon officer walked as though he was going to disappear in the shadows at any moment, so Xialian followed closely. As his eyes swept idly past the officer's wrist, he abruptly noticed that it bore a black cursed circle. A cursed shackle? His eyes widened, but he was silent in shock. Just then, the waning moon officer spoke up. "We are here." Celian looked up and realized he'd been led to a lake. There were haunting will-o'-the-wisps floating above the waters, playing around and chasing each other. Next to the lake stood a large, resplendent mansion. The Heavenly Realm and Ghost Realm both possess glamorous architecture. However, the glamour of the heavens put an emphasis on prominence and prestige, whereas the glamour of Ghost City lay in bewitching frivolity. Even the large characters displaying the name of the mansion, Paradise Manor, emitted an evil aura. Strange music came from inside, airy and soft, incredibly enchanting, as if there were many women giggling and teasing, singing and dancing languidly in play. Following the music, Xialian entered the mansion slowly. After raising a beaded curtain, warm, perfumed air came rushing at his face. Xialian turned his head slightly to avoid getting engulfed in the scent. A thick, snow-white rug made of the fur of some unknown beast covered the floors of the great hall of Paradise Manor. Surprisingly, it was a full pelt. Many beautiful and captivating women, barefoot and clad in light silk, were unfurling their lithe limbs like blossoming petals, sensual and beguiling as they danced to their heart's content. The music he heard came from them. The ladies were spinning seductively, like bouquets of roses covered in thorns, blossoming in the deep night. When they spun over to Xielian, they playfully teased him with their eyes. If any travelers walking in the night were to accidentally intrude upon the scene, it was hard to say whether they'd be more frightened or enchanted. However, when Xielian scanned the main hall, his eyes went straight through those women to the person seated in the back. At the end of the great hall, there was a large divan made of black jade, expansive in size. Upon it, over a dozen people could lounge, but there was only one man seated there, and it was Huatang. There was a group of gorgeous ghost women dancing before him, but he didn't spare them any looks, only lazily keeping his eye on what was before him. In front of Huatang was a small golden palace. It roughly resembled a heavenly palace, but upon closer inspection, that little structure was built from thin sheets of gold, stacked on top of one another. He was also absent-mindedly twirling a piece of gold foil in his hand. Gold Foil Palace. Celian had played this game often when he was a child. It was no different from village kids stacking rocks to build houses. When he was younger, he disliked the separation by nature, and it didn't matter what it was, as long as the objects were placed together. Celian would refuse to separate them. So whatever it was he built, he'd forbid anyone to touch it, and he was always wished desperately he could glue the fragile sheets together so that it'd never collapse. When he was even younger, if he saw his golden palaces fall apart, he'd be distressed to the point of refusing food and sleep until the king and queen coaxed him from his shell. The golden palace before him was grand, made of hundreds of layered foil sheets, and fragile like an egg, as if a gentle breeze could blow it down. Celian couldn't help but chant mentally, "Don't collapse, don't collapse." A brief moment later, however, Huatong gazed at his work and flashed a smile. He extended a finger and flicked the top of the golden palace. Flitter, flutter, flutter, flutter. The oil fluttered around and collapsed in a heap. Gold foil was now strewn across the ground. The golden palace was destroyed, but Huatong appeared amused by his handiwork, like a child who'd pushed over a tower of building blocks. He mindlessly threw away the gold foil sheet that was still in his hand and jumped off the divan. The dancing women immediately stopped in their steps and backed off to the sides, silencing their songs. Stepping on the gold foil sheets as he went, Huatong walked toward the entrance. "Since Gogo is here, why not come in? We haven't been apart for so long, so don't be a stranger to Sanlong." At this beckoning, Xielian let down the beaded curtain. Earlier in the gambler's den, it was Sanlang who pretended not to recognize me. Hua Cheng approached and stopped at Xie Lian's side. Lang Chenqiu was there too. So if I didn't put on an act, I'd be giving Gugu trouble. That was a really sloppy act, Xie Lian thought. Hua Tong probably knew that Shi Xuan was in the crowd too, so Xie Lian stopped worrying about hiding anything. Sanlang is knowledgeable as always. Hua Cheng laughed. Of course. So is Gaga here only to visit me? If Xie Lian had to be honest with himself, had he known Hua Tong was here, he would have asked for leave so he could pay him a visit. Alas, that was not what happened. Hua Tong, however, wasn't waiting for a response from Xie Lian and smiled. Whether you're here to see me or not, I'm happy either way. Xie Lian was startled by those words. He hadn't had a chance to respond before the women standing on the sides started giggling. Hua Cheng inclined his head, and they all stopped at once. Their heads bowed low. They soon filed out of the hall, leaving only the two of them in this massive chamber. Come have a seat here, Gaga. Xie Lian examined him as he followed, smiling. So, this is your real appearance? Hua Cheng paused slightly in his step. Maybe it was his imagination, but Hua Cheng's shoulders seemed to stiffen for a flash of a second. The moment didn't last, and Hua Cheng responded naturally. I did say that next time we met, I would greet you with my real appearance. Xie Lian grinned and said earnestly, Not bad. Xie Lian's tone wasn't teasing or consoling. The words very simply said. Hua Cheng gave a small smile back, and this time it was genuinely relaxed. They took a few more steps when Xie Lian suddenly remembered something important he'd wanted to confirm with Hua Cheng. He removed the silver chain from around his neck. By the way, Xie Lian said, did you leave this? Hua Cheng glanced at the ring and smiled. It's for you. What is it? Xie Lian asked. Nothing important, Hua Cheng replied. Just keep it for fun. Although that was what he said, Xie Lian knew that this object must be truly valuable, not something so insignificant. Then thank you, Sanlang. Seeing Xie Lian put the chain with the ring back around his neck, Hua Cheng's eyes shimmered brightly. Xie Lian looked around him. Back at the gambler's den, you said you were going to Paradise Manor. I thought it was something like a brothel or a red light district, but this looks more like an entertainment hall. Hua Cheng arched his brows. Coco, what are you saying? I'd never go to the red light district. Xie Lian was amazed. Really? Of course, Hua Cheng replied. The two approached the black jaded divan and sat down next to each other. Hua Cheng continued. This is nothing but a place I remodel now and then. A residence of sorts. I hang around here when I'm free. If I'm busy, I leave it be. So it's your home, Xie Lian commented. Residence, Hua Cheng corrected. Not a home. Is there a difference? Xie Lian asked. Of course, Hua Cheng replied. A home has a family. A place someone lives alone is not a home. Xie Lian felt his heartstrings stirred by this. By that definition, it had been over 800 years since he had anything that could be called a home. Although Hua Cheng had no trace of loneliness on his face, Xie Lian thought they were perhaps alike. Hua Cheng continued, If it's a home, then even a small place like Puqi's Shrine is a million times better than my Paradise Manor. Xie Lian agreed sincerely with the sentiment and smiled. I didn't realize that Sanlang was this sentimental. But to compare this to my Puqi Shrine, you're really pulling my leg here. Hua Cheng laughed. What's there to be embarrassed about? Truth be told, Gogo's Puqi Shrine is small, but so much more comfortable than my Paradise Manor. It's more like a home. Is that so? Celian said warmly. Then if you'd like it, in the future, come over whenever you want. The doors of Puzi's shrine will always open for you. Huatong's face lit up. Since Guga says so, then I'll gladly take you up on your offer. Don't think of me as a nuisance in the future. There's no way, Xielian said. By the way, Sanlan, I wanted to ask you for a favor, but I don't know if you have the time. What is it? Huacheng asked. This is my territory. If you ask, I'll deliver. After some thought, Xielian said, Before, when I was dealing with the case at Mount Yuzun, I ran into a boy who might have originated from my kingdom. Huacheng narrowed his eye but didn't say a word. Xielian continued his description. The boy was too scared and fled. I couldn't find him for the longest time, but earlier, when I was running around the streets of Ghost City, I discovered that he'd fled here. Sanlang, you're the lord of this land. Is there any way you can help me find him? The boy's face is wrapped in bandages, and he only just ran away from the front steps at Paradise Manor. Huatang smiled. All right, I understand. There's no need to worry, Guga. Just wait. Xielian sighed a breath of relief. Truly, thank you again. This is nothing, Huachang said. But you left Long Chou just like that? Xielian thought to himself, if Long Chou were here, straightforward and obtuse, who knows what trouble he'd start? It's probably best that we met up later. Xielian replied casually, His Highness Tai Hua caused you trouble earlier at the Gambler's Den. I'm sorry about that. That slightly condescending smirk appeared on Huatong's face again. What are you saying? Who is he to even count as trouble? The things he broke, Xielian started, and Huatong laughed. For Gaga's sake, I'll clear his account. He can go around as he wishes, as long as he doesn't show his face in front of me. Xielian was amazed. You don't care if there are heavenly officials frolicking about in your territory? Could Huatong really be that confident? Huatong smiled. Guga might know this, but while all three realms proclaim Ghost City to be a hell of corruption, a pandemonium, in reality everyone wants to come to a Karasu. So heavenly officials pretend not to care or speak ill of this place, but behind everyone's back, they often come in disguise and conduct unspeakable business. I've seen too much. If they don't stir up trouble, then I don't really care. And if they do, then even better. 'Cause then I can wipe them all out at once. It wasn't that His Highness Tai Hua was trying to cause havoc on purpose. It was just that after seeing a round of that sort of bets go down, he felt he had to stop it. He acted on impulse, Celian explained. That's his lack of experience, Huachang said impassively. Humans are all the same. When given the choice between gaining 10 extra years of their life or cutting their enemy's life 10 years shorter, they'd pick the latter without hesitation. He then crossed his arms. That an idiot like Lang Chen-cho can ascend. The heavens are truly lacking in humanity. Xialian rubbed his forehead, feeling a little guilty. You can't say it like that. After all, someone like me ascended 3 times. After some hesitation, Xialian spoke up again. Sanlang, it may be out of line for me, but I still have to say it. That gambler's den of yours is incredibly dangerous. Won't it blow up in your face one day? a place that allowed the betting of sons and daughters and people's lives, granting wishes for others' sudden death. It was truly dreadful, sinful. Never mind a little brawl. If one day the bets get out of hand, the heavenly realm wouldn't be able to stay on the sidelines. Huatang gave him a look. Your Highness, did you ask Lan Tincho why he had to jump into that mess? Xialian was slightly taken aback, not quite understanding the intent of the question. Huachang continued. It must have been because I bet he must have told you that if he didn't do it, no one else would. He was amazingly on the mark, obviously having seen through Lang Tinto. That is indeed what he said, Xialian admitted. Then I'm the complete opposite, Huachang said. If I don't control a place like this, then someone else will. I'd rather that person be me. Xialian knew when to back down and nodded. I understand. It seemed, although Huatang was the sentimental sort, he also cared more about control and power than Xialian realized. Huatang continued. Nonetheless, thank you, Gogo, for your concern. Just then, Xialian heard a voice from the door. Changshu, I've brought him. Xialian looked to the front entrance and saw the waning moon officer from before, bowing just beyond the beaded curtain. In his arms he held none other than the ragged boy in the bandages. Huatang didn't even turn his head. Bring him over. Thus the waning moon officer carried the boy inside and put him gently on the ground. Xialian couldn't help but peek at the officer's wrist again to see whether there really was a cursed shackle. But he bowed and stood down swiftly after delivering the boy. Since there were more important matters at hand, Xialian cut in first and soothed the boy. Don't be scared. It was my fault last time. I won't do it again. The boy's eyes were wide with fear and confusion, but he stayed in place, perhaps because he had run out of the energy to escape, or perhaps because he knew he couldn't get away. He peeked at Xialian, then peeked at the lap table of the black divan. Xialian followed his line of sight and saw he was eyeing a plate of luscious fruit. The boy must have been hiding for too long and not eaten. Xialian turned to Huatang before he nodded, but before he said anything, Huatang answered, Go ahead. No need to ask me. It wasn't the time for politeness, so Xialian uttered a thanks and reached for the plate of fruit, giving it to the boy. The boy snatched the plate from Xialian and started stuffing fruit into his mouth. It appeared he really was desperately starving. Even when Xialian was at his worst, starved like a stray dog, he never shoved food in his mouth like this. Slow down, he chided gently. After a pause, he attempted. What's your name? The boy mumbled as he ate, looking as if he was trying to say something but couldn't do so clearly. He may not have spoken in many years, and has forgotten how, Huatang suggested. Indeed, it looked like the boy did not speak much, not even to Xiao Ying, and had likely been like this for a long time. Xialian sighed. We can do this slowly. By then, all the fruit on the plate had been devoured like a whirlwind. Seeing that his bandages were soaked with dry blood, covered in black and red spots alike, Xialian made a gentle offer after a moment of thought. There are wounds on your face, and they seem serious. Let me help take a look. At the mention of unwrapping his bandages, fear immediately engulfed the boy's eyes. However, after Xialian's tireless soothing and encouragement, he once more sat down obediently. Xialian retrieved a bottle of medicinal powder from his sleeve, slowly moving as he unraveled the mess of bandages around his head. As he had suspected, although the boy's face was a mangled mess, all the terrifying little human faces were gone, replaced by large blotches of bright red scars. The last time they met at Mount Yuzun, There were burns covering his face, but not as much blood. This boy must have used a knife to cut away the human faces from his own since then, leaving those scars behind. Xie hands trembled softly as he rubbed the medicine in. Hua Tiang caught his wrist and said, "Let me." Xie shook his head and gently pulled his hand free, then said in a low voice, "No, let me do this myself." 800 years ago, in the kingdom of Xianle, many who contracted the disease found themselves with no other options and chose this route of self-mutilation. It was hell on earth. Some would miss their target and cut where they shouldn't, and die from blood loss as a result. Some, although successful in removing the terrible lesions, never healed from those wounds. As Xie wrapped fresh bandages around the boy's head, he realized that his features were actually quite proper. His nose straight and refined, his eyes black and clear. He should have been a handsome young man, but now he bore such a terrifying appearance. It was like many others before him. Even if he cut away the distorted human faces, his face would forever be a nightmare, never to recover. Xie finished wrapping the new bandages before he asked with a shaky voice, Are you from Xianle? The boy turned a gaze at him with big eyes. Xie repeated his question, but the boy only shook his head. Xie then asked, "Then where are you from exactly?" The boy answered arduously, "Yong'an."